What's the creepiest, most disturbing thing a child had ever said to you? I was watering my neighbor's plants in their yard while they were away on vacation. The downstairs tenants had 2 small children, maybe 3 and 5. They came outside and asked what I was doing. I explained that I was watering the plants so they wouldn't die. The youngest kid looked at me and said, "I wish I was gonna die." Then they both skipped away to do whatever. My sister and I looked at each other like WTF just happened. In my mind they wanted to play in a sprinkler or something. Like they wanted to need to be watered or they would die. But who knows, kids are weird. LOL. I'm a fascia painter at a farm and I see a lot of kids, day in day out, during summer. I remember this one little girl. She was sweet. She asked for some sort of Elsa, Frozen, tiara fascia paint. Sure. Once it was done, I showed her and she liked it. She got up, took a few steps alongside to her mum, then turned round, looked directly in my eyes and said, "I'm going to kill you." The mum was mortified. She awkwardly laughed and hurried her daughter away saying, "I'm sorry." I don't know why she said that. It was quite funny though. There can only be one fascia painter. When my son was 4 or 5 he asked where my daddy was. I told him he was not here because he died. He thought a moment and asked when people die. I told him hopefully after a long meaningful life. He looked at me dead in the eye and said, "No, you'll die when you're 40. Sorry daddy." He ran off to play. I'm now 38 and really hoping I don't die at 40. I'm now following you on Reddit for the explicit purpose of seeing you live past 40. Please don't hurt my daddy, like she had said it 100 times before. A little girl tugging at my pants as I physically removed her father from our restaurant after he physically attacked our general manager, who asked the drunken, drugged out father to leave because he was throwing food and cutlery at the other patrons. The father being removed was there for his daughter's birthday. It still haunts me. Almost 5 years later, I had a fricked up childhood, but that little girl's face when she was tugging on my pants, she's seen some crap. I work at a gas station. A kid of about 10 years old walked up to the cash register with a bottle of wine. To which I said, "I hope that's not for you," in a joking manner. She looked around to see if somebody was around, and quietly said to me, "My mom gets mad when she doesn't have this around, so I try to get it when she has a bad day." I feel bad for selling it to her. I was with my 7-year-old cousin and she had told me if I knew where my 12 or 13-year-old cousin was. He had died at an early age. I didn't know what to say to her and I told her I think he is at his home. She sees me confused and told me, "What are you saying? I just saw him in the house upstairs." I did not know what to say to her and I just talked about something else. I had a kid call me by name at a park while my daughter was on the swings. This boy, maybe 7 years old, walks right up to me and says my name, like he's surprised to see me. I just kind of look at him funny, and he says, "Oh, yeah, you wouldn't recognize me now." He ran off towards a wooded area, and I lost sight of him. I have never seen this kid before in my life, and I was 35 at the time. This was a park a block away from my house. Nobody on our street has kids this age. Nobody I know has kids his age. I haven't seen this kid since. My daughter remembers this, so I wasn't imagining this event either. I worked at a daycare and one of the kids I worked with is autistic and extremely sweet. One day out of the blue she said to me, "Miss Rose, my mom did a funny thing last year on my birthday." I said, "Oh, what was that?" She said, "She went to sleep in the bathtub, but never woke up." I was a little stunned and really hoped she was making this up. She was like 4 or 5, and not really hoping what she really meant. I later learned from a co-worker that her mom killed herself on her daughter's birthday and her daughter saw the whole thing. I never felt my break so fast and so hard for someone. I really hope that kid is getting the help she needs. I was holding my son whilst standing at the bottom of the stairs. He was very young and only really just starting to learn how to speak. Suddenly he looks up the stairs as if he'd seen someone. I ask him who it is and he said, clear as day, he says he's daddy. Oh my god. When she was around 4 years old, my daughter woke up, looked at me and said, "Why did they zip me up in the big black bag?" I said, "What bag?" She said, "I couldn't move and they put me in a big black bag and zipped it up." She's now 18 and still has the same recurring dream about being zipped up in a body bag. When my youngest was around 3, I was trying to get her in the bathtub but she was fighting me hard. In her little girl voice she said, "I scared of water because it's how I die before." Freaked me out and she didn't get her bath that night. My mom said when I was a kid I ran to her, terrified, and said the devil is in our carpet. I have no recollection of this. In my opinion, that's funny as heck, but my mother did not enjoy it. I used to have nightmares that the basement carpet would come alive and try to eat me too. I get pretty upset with myself when I think about this one, but here it goes. One day I was at my friend's house, playing video games in his bedroom when his mom calls him to go do something. I'm in there sitting on the bed playing when his 5-year-old niece sits on the bed next to me and says, "Do you want to hump on me?" I was totally creeped out, so I got up and left the room without even looking at her. I didn't say anything to anyone because I thought she was just being a weird little kid. At the time I knew that I should probably mention it to someone, but it was such a weird thing to talk about. I found out a couple of years later that her father had been molesting her and her sisters. I might have been able to save them a couple years of torment if I had said something. It's hard to speak up sometimes, but man, the alternative is so much worse. Hindsight's a B. I'm sure like 90% of people would have done the same thing as you. Not your fault. Hope the girls are doing better now. I was a counselor at a camp for kids between the ages of 5-10 and this one 6-year-old girl with 2 piggy tails and a pink princess dress walked up to me and held a chopstick up to my face before giving me the most deadliest look I've ever seen a child give anyone and said, "I dream of killing you with my chopstick. I want to hear you scream," then skipped away. By far the creepiest thing anyone has ever said to me. My 12-year-old niece, after recovering from her 3rd bout of cancer, reacting to a clean scan 3 months later. "I don't even care anymore. I am tired. I cried for a week." A 12-year-old who has given up the will to fight for her life. It's sad, but I can understand. Fighting 3 times by 12, and as I understand it tends to come back more aggressive. That would have to get exhausting in that short of a span. At that point you'd probably be figuring you'll be doing this all the time. My best friend's almost 5-year-old child went at Arches National Park for the first time. I remember this. Me. Really? When were you here before? See, when you were my mommy and your mommy was your sister and my mommy was a mean lady who kept trying to take me. She got me this time, but it's okay cause she was supposed to this time. My son told me I knew him when he was a man. He was about 3 years old at the time. I asked how I knew him and he said he was my dad. My dad passed when I was 5. He named my 2 siblings and called me by a family nickname that hadn't been used since my childhood. I recently had to talk an 8 or 9-year-old out of suicide. He said he wanted to kill his family, burn the house down while he was still inside, and he only doesn't because he knows it will hurt and he won't get into heaven. His family knows about this and they do nothing about it, despite many people repeatedly telling them that he needs serious psychiatric help. We called CPS. Holy crap. My son for a short while would say hi and start talking in the direction of the window in the bedroom at night. He said he was talking to the man out the window. We also live on the 2nd floor. Luckily thus was short-lived. A more fun instance. He used his play kitchen to cook me food. He brought it over all happy. Then when I grabbed the bowl he whispered it's dangerous, then happily ran off to play. The bowl being dangerous is pretty easily explained by a child being warned about hot food or plates as they are being handed it. Restaurants always warn kids about hot food. I have no doubt he was told, "Careful, it's dangerous because it's hot." 4 AM. My toddler leaning over my face. I thought she was leaning in for a kiss. Nope. Mama. I want to. Yes honey, what do you want? I want to eat your eyes. Upon further questioning, she clarified she wanted just a taste because eyes are salty, and that she intended to use a spoon for them. Might want to stock up on fava beans and Chianti. My friend's older sister, when she was a small child, was playing with an imaginary friend. When her mom asked who she was playing with, she said Roderick. That was the name of the old man who died in their house before they moved in. This sister has continued to have strange things happen around her. Tell us more. I was with my 10-year-old in her room trying to help her get to sleep as she was wide awake. As we were laying there silent, she said to me, "Mum, stop whispering to me." Auditory hallucinations are super common when people are about to fall asleep or just waking up. Hopefully that's all it was and she was just really tired. I worked at a summer camp and we went on a field trip to a historical reenactment village that was near a river. One of the kids took a step off the bus and said, "It smells like dead people here." We got into the village a bit further and saw a bunch of cops milling around. It turns out they just pulled a body out of the river. WTF, kid? Why do you know that smell? And how did you so easily pick it up? My 4-year-old has a hard time falling asleep each night. I asked her why and she said it was because she saw the shadow man come out of my room. I used to say very similar things as a kid. Turns out I get sleep paralysis a lot. It's not as frequent now as an adult, but randomly at age 8, I had problems sleeping in my bed because of the man that would come in and tickle me. It's pretty common sleep disorder with kids. My brother had it and grew out of it. My parents had taken custody of my niece and nephew after their parents disappeared on them. My niece told me one day how her daddy made her mommy's nose bleed and then told me he used to slam her head into the wall. My 4-year-old was terrified of his room to the point he would climb on me and grab me hard when we got near. He said the things that looked dead came in his room at night. I didn't believe in that BS, so I laid him down and laid with him until he was asleep every night. One night he was screaming and I knew it wasn't normal. He was hysterical and I was comforting him and he looked into the corner, nothing was there, and screamed, "No, my mom does too love me." I ran out of there and was freaked out. The next day my dad died. I didn't tell him. He was in bed and the next morning he said, "Pappy came and protected me from the dead things." There was never an issue after that. If someone told me this I would say they're lying. I was so upset I anointed the house with oil and I am not religious at all. Okay, this one gave me pins and needles. Yep, oil, salt. Working at a summer camp. Your hair would make really good fire kindling. Girl also at a watermelon rind, so IDK, which one is creepier? My little sister is 21 years younger than me and was adopted from an Eastern European country. I was visiting my dad when my sister was around 4. I woke up around 3 AM one night to the sounds of whispering and looked up to see my little sister standing over me in the dark. Her eyes had rolled back into her head and she was whispering gibberish while slowly rocking from side to side. I called out her name. She didn't seem to hear me. Then she froze, focused on my eyes and started a high-pitched laugh, before abruptly stopping and running out of the room. She didn't remember anything in the morning. I always make sure to lock my bedroom door when she's in the same house as me now. If that little monster wants to curse me again, she'll have to learn to pick locks. At Dean Winchester, yes, I'd like to report a demonic possession. My possibly autistic 4-year-old niece. I hate you. I'm gonna peel your skin off when you sleep, like an orange. Holy frick. I'm absolutely terrified of flying. A few years ago my family moved halfway across the states. My son was 4 at the time and we were headed home after a few weeks with my parents. Whilst taxiing on the tarmac, my son gets very teary-eyed. I ask him what's wrong and he says to me, "We're never going to see Nana and Gigi ever again." So I enter Final Destination mode. I try to be reassuring, saying no, honey, we'll see them again. We just have to go home for a little bit. That's all. He looks at me and says, "We'll never, ever see them again." Then the plane took off and I'm silently freaking out. As we went wheels up, we hit a pocket of turbulence which sent me into a spiral of terror as I began to cry. My son found that funny and cheered right up. I was babysitting a couple of kids. I was only about 13 myself. They were 9 and 7. One of the kids decided he was going to sleep on the stairs. It was probably the wrong thing to say, but I said, "If you sleep here you might fall down the stairs and get hurt or die." The kid said, "Well, I want to die." That sure shut me up. I had no idea how to respond to that. I was 9 years old when I started saying things like this too. My mom said I was always talking about death and disappearing. Now that I'm older I realize I was probably suicidal. BC, my grandpa was constantly molesting me all my childhood. I was tired of it. I'm sleeping at like 3 AM on a school night and I wake up to small nibbling sounds. It was early summer or something, so I assume an animal had gotten in. I had my window open. I wake up to find a net and the animal, only to find out my little sister. 5 at the time, nibbling on something. I don't remember, but I do remember it was a type of meat. I ask her what she is doing and she replies, sharing with Mikey. Mikey was our cat. She just said she was sharing food with our dead cat. I didn't get much sleep. No more ask did for me. Was in my teens and my friend and I were playing with a Ouija board while home alone. We talked to a little boy who had died in a fire etc etc. Just teenagers trying to scare themselves. Anyway, we stopped after a bit and about an hour later my parents and sister, maybe 6 at the time, came back. We were still upstairs when my sister comes in the room and asks who is that little boy in the corner. Never played with a Ouija board again. As a young teen my best friend and I played with a Ouija board one time. Never again. It just plain creeped me out. And I don't believe in woo, magic, spirits or gods. The things our brains sometimes do, or how they do it, is not understood yet. Me and my friend would pick up his little brother from school almost every day. On our walks back home, we would pass this abandoned house that was supposed to be haunted. One time on our walk, his little brother stopped and stared at the broken basement window of the house and waved and said hello. Me and my friend looked at each other and immediately got out of there. We never walked down that street again. I was once talking to a 5-year-old on the bus and he got all mad at everyone and threatened to have sex with everyone and to pee in their mouths. And this kid was 5. I hope he wasn't talking from experience aka abuse. Worked at a video game store. An 8-year-old wanted GTA. Mom wanted the kid to shut up so bought it despite me telling her explicitly what was in the game. Previously she didn't want him to buy Halo because of the violence. At this point she just wanted her kid to stop bitching and shut up. She stopped caring. I go to cash them out and the kid looks at me and asks, "Can I fly planes into buildings like 9/11?" and I was just freaking stunned. So was the mom. I ignored the kid, looked at the mom and stated the total. She was mortified. Dumbass still bought the game for her little brat. Halo would have been a much better choice. I played Resident Evil at the age of 4. And they said as long as I didn't copy actions and understood it wasn't real and had time controls, they were fine. And I had no issues. I was asked to drive an autistic student to school. I work at a middle school, because he couldn't behave on the bus and I lived relatively close to him. One day, shortly after I began driving him, he said he was going to shoot me in the head, take my brain out and eat it. I asked the school to arrange for someone else to drive him. Are those your boobs? I'm hungry. My nephew at barely 3 years old and recently weaned. While I was babysitting for my sister, there were witnesses. Most notably his grandmother who was there, but refused to actually babysit. As a young child 4 I believe viewed death as only by age and so I told my gramps you'll die first and goddamn I wish I was wrong. When I was 12 he died of congestive heart failure in rehab. I miss you every day gramps, you did more for me than my biological father. I'd move mountains just to see you again even if it was just for a day or two. My wife's little cousin wrote us a note before I took my first flight ever. It was written in red crayon and said do not leave. Spoiler alert. We took the flight anyway and are still alive and well. You glowed now, but you haven't arrived at your final destination bro. 2 of my nieces, 5 and 6 years old, whom I hadn't seen for half a year didn't seem too thrilled when they saw me. I told them, I missed you guys so much. They looked at me weird, then back at each other. I thought maybe they forgot me. Then one of them said, but we play together all the time, Tinkerbell. I looked at their mom for an explanation, and she's like, yeah, they call you Tinkerbell, and always talk about you. It's odd, but they like to go to the basement to play with Tinkerbell for hours. I think it's their imaginary friend. WTH. It's impossible for me to travel 1,000 miles to go play with them every day night. I think it's time to ask your mom if you have any dead relative that looks a lot like you. Maybe a twin, aunt, grandparent. My little cousin who is almost 2 years old heard my other cousin telling me a story. In it, the man was sacrificing himself for another person and was saying let me die when the other person protested no. Next thing I know my 2-year-old cousin is running around yelling let me die, let me die. My 6-year-old niece told me that she wanted to have a baby when she was 14. I was like, what? Why? She said, "My parents will be dead then and I want the baby to keep me company." She's now 21 and about as happy and well adjusted as you'd want. Kids really don't get the concept of time or age. My daughter said there was an old woman in her room and hobbled like this around her room, then proceeded to show us. My son says he's seen someone and my dog went to the stairs and looked up at something that moved up there. Next door confirmed something is there because her daughter saw the same thing. She's apparently nice because she warned the girl who previously lived in the house that she was ill. It turned out that she had leukemia but survived. I'm also sure this person looked over my shoulder as I changed my daughter's nappies very early in the morning. I could feel it. Totally not evil though. She was just being curious, I suppose. I picked my daughter up when I finished, turned around and nodded at whatever was there. Sounds like a sweet little house ghost to me. Nothing to worry too much about. I was babysitting a little girl and she had her Barbie doll with her. We were walking to the park and she starts talking to the Barbie, telling her we are going to go play now in the park and stuff. All of a sudden she smacks the doll and yells, "Don't you say that." She proceeds to throw the doll on the ground, stomp on it, and she is just screaming at it. I ask her what happened. She just picks up her doll, dusts her off, smiles at me and says, "Oh, she was just saying some bad things. I hear her taught me all the time but we made up now." Needless to say, I never babysitted her or in general again. That felt straight out of a horror movie. This one is horrifying and makes me wonder what went on in her home. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.